Hello and welcome to Films and That, the show where we talk about films that usually don't get talked about. My name's Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
And today we are talking about John Carpenter's Dark Star. Originally a university project for John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, Dark Star is a 1974 sci-fi comedy that follows a group of disillusioned astronauts as they travel the galaxy destroying unstable planets. This review contains spoilers.
So the film doesn't really have a plot as such. There are plot points, but the film is mainly about the interactions between the characters. It's about their living almost anti-surrogate family, just a group of people living together in a situation that they're stuck with, almost like a prison, I guess.
And they're very depressed and they're very just kind of disillusioned with their situation.
I like to think of it as purgatory.
Yes, definitely.
A kind of a purgatory in space. Yeah. So why are they blowing up planets?
Blowing up planets to stop them from eventually going into supernova, falling into the suns of their solar systems and going supernova, to protect the outlying worlds of those solar systems for future colonization. It's a very kind of tenuous link, really. They just need an excuse for the characters to go out on this situation.
So the science isn't important.
Don't give me any of that intelligent life stuff. Find me something I can blow up.
John Carpenter's described this as Waiting for Godot in space, Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot, which is essentially about nothing. There is obviously philosophical undercurrent to it, but it's there's an existential theme to it. I think there is that to Dark Star as well, that nothing really is going on that's particularly important. There's nothing significant going on. And I guess that's kind of the point, there's space is boring, there's nothing to do, we're all going to die. I think that's the sort of undercurrent. And Waiting for Godot is kind of an influence on that.
Definitely, and that's the biggest thing to say about this film, is it's very influential. And even if you've not seen Dark Star or you don't like it, you can't deny that it has a certain place within the development of science fiction cinema. So it just feels to me like just the midpoint between your arty 2001. It's very 2001, but it's also modern films like Guardians of the Galaxy. It just fits in between those two kind of extremes quite well, I think.
I think it has been described as the anti-2001. 2001 is a clear influence, being the biggest sci-fi film up until that point ever. And there's so many little things from it that were inspired by it. But I think what they took from it in this situation was the boring side of 2001. It's that the waiting in space, the slowness of it, the fact that nothing's going on, and in reality we're only human. We're not gonna hang around feeling high and mighty and superior about that situation. We're all going to be bored, and we're going to do stupid things, as undoubtedly the real astronauts must do.
That's not for target practice. That's for emergencies only. I'll tell Doolittle.
We're not selling this film quite as well as we probably should be, just saying it's boring all the time. But it is a comedy film.
And that's kind of the point. It draws its comedy from their situation.
It has actually gone on to directly influence comedies such as Red Dwarf.
Yeah, it influenced the radio show that Red Dwarf was based on. But it is a very direct influence. I think, that the themes of Dark Star are fundamental to the themes of Red Dwarf. One parallel that can be drawn is the characters of Pinback and Rimmer. They're not distinctly similar, but they play the same character as the annoying one that everyone hates on the ship. For example, Rimmer has this obsession with Alien. There's one episode in the early season when he's obsessed with this idea that there's an alien in a pod. Lister knows better, and of course it turns out to be a garbage pod. Pinback tries to bring an alien on board and instantly regrets it.
Come on. When I brought you on the ship, I thought you were cute.
And it turns out this alien they does bring on board is just this really weird big beach ball creature. Even though you don't see it for the first 20 minutes or so, there is a massive set piece that comes out of Pinback trying to feed this alien. First off, It escapes when he tries to feed it and starts running around the ship. It then leads him into an elevator shaft, which then he can't get out of. It starts attacking him, so he falls down, and then the elevator starts coming down. There's just this one thing after the other. And this whole scene of the alien causing a mock among the spaceship was later
I
developed...
don't think you cause a mock. I think you just run amok.
Right.
Okay.
Who's overthinking it now?
I'm not overthinking it. I just want you to be right.
The main set piece of the film revolves around the alien running amok among the spaceship, and this was later developed by Dan O'Bannon into his script for Alien, another film you may not have heard of.
Oh. Dan O'Bannon, in this case, playing Pinback. He also co-wrote the film, did a lot of other things. And he went on to write for a few films, including Alien. This scene, it was just inverted from the comedic aspect of it in Dark Star and decided to make it a horror film, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah, I think Dan O'Bannon said the reason he made it into a horror film was because he made it a comedy and no one laughed at it, so he made it a horror film.
Yeah. He actually suffered from Crohn's disease, which eventually took his life. R.I.P. And that that aspect of his life influenced the John Hurt's chest bursting scene, apparently. So Dan and John Carpenter met at the University of Southern California. They made the film as a university project and then tried to sell it on to a distributor, which eventually they did. They had to reshoot some of it and get it up to a longer standard to put in the theatres. But they still had a very low budget, which set the tone for the film.
The low budgetness of the... Low budgetness?
No, there's no such word, I'm sorry.
The low budget is just part of the charm for me. From the alien design to how Talby's spacesuit has got muffin tins all down it.
Yeah, and the helmet was part of a children's toy.
Yeah, and that's why it's so snug on the actors' heads. Very cult cinema, very B-movie.
It all goes back to, I think, to Waiting for Godot, a low-key aspect to the film. It's not important how it looks, it's that you get that sense and that feel of a kind of existential dread.
There's lots of cramped environments, lots of really basic environments. It just looks like quite a nightmarish place to live in.
Yeah, I think that reflects the time period of, obviously it's set in the future, but the 70s had this sort of post-60 hangover. Hippies had gone on from being the in thing to just everyone, and that there was a lot of prejudice surrounding that kind of aspect of society and that culture, and I think that was part of what the film was kind of trying to reflect in a way.
Yeah, and a lot of the characters, they just hate each other. They just don't want to talk to each other.
Yeah, well, that adds to the charm as well, like the low budgetness. You won that one. I said low budgetness.
What's Talby's first name? My first name.
I feel quite sorry for Talby though, because he's the only one that's taken it seriously. And he goes down to the airlock to fix the problem later on, and then he tells them about the problem. He tells them that he's in the airlock, and then later on, I think it's Pinback just opens the airlock because he forgets he's in there and just fires him out the airlock.
Would you blow the seal on the emergency hatch so I can come in?
Oh, sure.
Well, yeah, but again, I think Pinback takes certain things seriously. They discover a new system or something, and Pinback says to Doolittle, "Do you want to name it?"
The new star, what are you going to name it?
Who cares? Don't bother me.
Commander Powell would have named it.
They all have their own sort of drives, but Talby seems to be the only one who's perhaps likeable out of any of them, and yet he gets flown out the airlock. And he seems to forgive Doolittle for it later on.
One of the most interesting things that I found about the film was this kind of the sentience of the bomb thing, which is very Douglas Adams.
And it gets into Red Dwarf as well. That idea of a man-made construct suddenly having the same beliefs and drives as humans, almost to an annoying point. It kind of almost brings in a sort of idea of the pointlessness of philosophy. That it doesn't matter that the bomb has this sort of sense of purpose that's going to kill everyone, because at the end of the day, he's just going to kill everyone.
Yeah. He's desperate to explode as well. He's really annoyed when there's this false alarm and they have to put him back in the bomb bay, and he's just really annoyed that he can't explode.
Yeah.
Please return to the bomb bay while I identify the source of the problem.
Oh, all right. But this is the last time.
There's even one point when Doolittle, he starts to try and convince the bomb that he's received these false statements from Pinbeck, and that everything he knows about the world is just through these electronic cables that he doesn't even know if they exist or not. So he's arguing theological points to this machine, essentially. I just think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, well, he's doing it to keep himself alive for a few more moments.
Which doesn't work.
Which doesn't work.
Let there be light.
So the bomb explodes, and that brings us back round to the original aspect of the film about being about a kind of sweet release, I think, from the purgatory that they're living in. Especially for Doolittle, he takes a piece of debris from the ship and surfs towards his death onto a nearby planet.
I think that's the only thing that makes him happy.
Well, I guess they were all pretty unhappy. Boiler couldn't care less about anything. Pinback cared too much, but just hated his life so much that death probably would be something he would have liked. They had nothing going for them in the end.
Just kind of ended this limbo for them.
Yeah.
What a depressing way to end a film review.
So, final thoughts, Rob, on Dark Star?
I really love Dark Star. It's maybe one of my favourite films.
Really? That is high praise.
I think there's lots of weirdness in it, which is quite interesting. You wouldn't see this, like the design of the alien, the Beach Ball alien in other films. You won't see the nothing going on and characters forgetting their own names. I really like the tone of that.
I think it's... I'm not that into it. But it's kind of like my opinions on the band Metallica, I think. I'm not a fan, but I appreciate the influence they have on a lot of music that I do like. And Dark Star is clearly a massive influence on sci-fi. Not quite to the same extent as 2001, or Star Wars. No. But it's still... It may be a cult film, it may be fairly unknown. It still seems to resonate.
It deserves to be talked about a lot more, I think. I think it does get forgotten.
Benson, Arizona, the warm wind through your hair. My body flies the galaxies, my heart longs to be there.
So that's it for this time on Films and That. I hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you will join us next time. Thanks for watching, subscribing, etc.